What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into the astrology this week? Because you know what? This one I think is an intriguing one that we're going to be moving into. We got a couple planetary shifts that we're going to be kind of navigating there. The moon starts off in Leo, which is feeling kind of energized. I like that. But then we get to the moon in Virgo. That one's just looking really active. The moon's going to be forming a lot of aspects, and a couple of those are going to be kind of hard ones, just because with both of the malefics having been, one in Sagittarius and the Saturn being in Pisces, that's made those pockets, those signatures, and that bit uncomfortable, So that's going to be like probably the most challenging part of the week, and then the moon moves into Libra, kind of lightening things up some. We're feeling Venusian, all that good, all those lovely Venus things, and then it wraps up its time actually in the sign of its fall when we get into Scorpio. But interesting, around that time Mars will have changed signs, and that's something we're really going to kind of talk about too, how those changes can signify those changes in like the community, your environment, your home space, yourself, things along those lines. But before we jump into all those things, if you're new here, again, my name is Justin. And one of the things that I talk about on this channel is the Lunar Shenanigans, which just goes over the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, what happens to be going void of course, and just to get a general feel of the energies each week, as the moon is making these changes and having these different conversations with the other celestial bodies. So that's what you're in store for. Now, if you want to support the work that I'm doing further, down in the description box is a link for my Patreon page. And on there I have two tiers. One of them is for one of them is for the Lucky Day podcast, where I talk way more eloquently about picking out the most auspicious dates for each month, and then for whatever endeavor that you're wanting to initiate. And then the second will give you access to the podcast plus a monthly personalized transit report from me. So if that's something that you're interested in and want to support my work further, that information is down in the description box below. Now let's go ahead and jump into this thing here, because I'm going to be covering the week of January. We've gone to the future. The week of December 9th through the 15th, 2025. Let's get into this. This has got the last quarter moon here. Let's just wrap this lunar month up, because we get to the 9th of December. Now, before the moon moves into Virgo, like I said, it's going to be finishing up its time in Leo, and it's going to be completing a couple of trines. One's happening with the sun and one's happening with Mars. Now, the trines are when the celestial bodies are 120 degrees apart from one another. It's the most positive aspect. It's sympathetic. It's beneficial. Love that. Love a trine. And so when we think about moon trining sun, that to me gives that energy of, you wake up and you're just feeling inspired, you're feeling productive, feeling motivated, that good sort of like mind-body connection. It's like, and then that Mars coming through there, where Mars, of course, is a malefic, it can bring about challenges, but this gives the moon, with it being a trine, I feel like it makes Mars challenges not as hard, or like Mars doesn't like just like coming at you. You know what I mean? It could be like that, waking up and like, I think I'm going to let's just start doing that. I've been thinking about my workout routine for a while. I've been wanting to start maybe doing more walking or more things like that. Let's like, why wait to the new year? Let's just start now. Let's do this thing, get this thing going. Whatever that might be looking like. Maybe you want to, thinking about, maybe there's something you want to cut out, for example. This could be an easier time for that, even thinking in the waning cycle. That could be a good thing for kind of demolishing things. So maybe there's something that maybe you've been wanting to do some renovations around the home space, possibly, or whatever that might be. Maybe it's like, okay, let me tackle that leak, whatever that could be. That could be some of that trine energy that's coming through there. Now, the squaring with Mercury, that could be one. I mean, if you're fixing a leak, okay, I got to read instructions, I got to do all those things. I got to put my mind to work. There could be a bit of mental tensions there, I think, with the moon square Mercury, but I don't think it all has to be just negative. I think, because the squares can be a bit tougher there when the celestial bodies are 90 degrees apart from one another. But again, they're starting this action, but they are a bit inharmonious sometimes, when we're thinking about the squares. But This could even be that it gives me that feeling. I just went through a where Moon was the square my Mercury not too long ago, and that was a very interesting time because I was like, and they're usually really interesting times because it's like it feels like when you're learning something new and you're feeling those brain wave, you're making new connections and things. That's one thing I feel like a Moon Mercury square could maybe potentially kind of feel like there. But collectively, this could even be, you may just maybe seeing just more people just being kind of active there. Maybe there's a lot going on as far as like maybe they're doing some, like maybe there are different projects that are going on in your city, for example. That could be something that shows that the Moon was associated with like the cities, the homeland, things like that. Maybe there's something that with that sun, maybe like whatever authorities are making some sort of like whatever changes that they're wanting to do. That might even be that Moon square thing. Maybe there are some, maybe there's some changes that are happening really quickly. Possibly there, and like the Moon's just trying to to process all of these things that are the Moon representing the people. Really kind of processing. Maybe the changes. Maybe you're noticing that buildings are going up, or maybe things are coming down, and to make space for something new. So, yeah, that could be, and it could be interesting, again, tuning into the changes of things, and then just seeing how that, again, that shows up in the everyday. I think could be a really sort of fascinating thing with this energy, with this little pocket here. I also see this, this could be too, where I was thinking about how, and I was having a conversation with someone about this, like how a lot of, at least in and I'm sure this is happening. This is really happening everywhere. How we're making that shift from, going from having paper money to having more kind of digital currency, and really starting to where it was like talked about for a while, but now it's like really kind of trickling down. I think you see it more where a lot of places aren't taking cash and things like that, and so you can maybe be seeing certain trends there that might be happening. As well, maybe making some sort of cuts, or Moon square Mercury. That I even get that as like both of them really kind of be Mercury dealing with like the markets, and not just like stock markets and things, but just like I would think like just kind of general markets and just like kind of commerce in general. Maybe there's a bit, it's like wanting to do these things, but then maybe they're thinking about the pricing of stuff. It's like, how am I going to get these possessions? Like, and one way, and let's go ahead and get into, because that's going to kind of, well, I guess no, let me not jump ahead, but because I still got to talk about the Moon in Virgo. But this could be where maybe with that Moon square Mercury, just one last thought on that, maybe, you're noticing changes around, like, as far as like, just like the prices of things. So now we're thinking of like more, kind of efficient ways to manage our resources or things like that. Like, okay, maybe the gyms become too expensive, so maybe you invest in some weights and work out from home, get some equipment like that. Those could be some kind of Moon square Mercury things, But then we get towards the end of the day, and then the Moon's going to move into Virgo at about 11:20 p.m., and that's going to be Pacific time. And if you're watching the video here, I have the chart of that one with the Moon entering into Virgo. And what I like to do, as we get into that practice of when a celestial body enters into a new sign, just getting a lay of the land, with the Moon here. And like I said, this is good. Moon in Virgo is going to be an active one. You got this sextile with Jupiter, which is really nice that it's going to eventually form, square with Venus. But it's a lot of squares that's happening here. It's going to square Venus, square the Sun, and then that's going to have that hard aspect with Mars towards the end of its time in Virgo. And also too, around the same time, we'll have that opposition with Saturn. So that's something where there's going to be a lot of busyness, I think, when the Moon is entering into Virgo. And Virgo is the mutable earth sign. They are one of the nocturnal signs, so it's more of a receptive energy with Virgo. Their ruler is Mercury. And when I think about Virgo, that is one, it is a very efficient energy. Virgo is as a general archetype, is just like kind of like the problem solver. They're the ones that can find solutions to things, and not just find a solution, but how can I make them work better, and how can I make this thing really, how can I repurpose this thing possibly, or what just needs to get rid of altogether. I think Virgo is a very discerning, just a proficient, but very proficient energy, So I think that this can be one whenever the moon's in an earth sign. I think always a great time to just kind of get grounded in the body. Think about just the things that you're fueling and making sure that you're getting enough rest. I think Virgo's one that'll just push itself. So thinking that it needs to do more, just kind of that's real strict, on itself. So that's something I think to pay attention to, of just like overdoing it. Pay attention to what your body's telling you, to the signals that you're doing, how you're managing yourself with the moon in Virgo. But yeah, overall, like I do generally like a moon in Virgo. It's a great time for getting some things done, for getting stuff, getting things in order, when we're working with Virgo and whatever that may be looking like for you. So, but let's go ahead and move into the next day here, because then we get to the 10th of December. And then the moon's going to start its first aspect, that it's going to complete when it's enters into Virgo, is going to be that square with Venus. Now, I like, we like aspects with the benefics. That is really nice. But when we have a hard aspect with the benefics, I think there is a need to pay attention to sometimes the things that we take for granted. The idea of just like taking care of oneself, of having some rest. I think a lot of the times we can get into that thing of like always having to do more, always having to do this, having to do that. Or even on the other end of it, like think about Venus and the weighing of things, where maybe we've dipped into, maybe it's been stuck in like a comfort zone, been sort of keeping things just kind of easy, not really kind of pushing oneself a little bit. So that can be where, ultimately I think, when we're talking with the benefics, it's even if there's something challenging, it can lead to this sense of relief. But, the benefics can, lead, especially if there's, in some tricky situations, they can lead to just like, you gain things, but then you lose them just as quickly. You know what I mean? So that could be something where maybe, again, you're looking at like maybe where you've been spending your finances possibly. I think that's always a very easy example. Maybe you're noticing you got more coming in than going out, and it may not be the answer of just acquiring more. It may be, okay, where do I need to repurpose my finances? Maybe where I need to, again, maybe a big, if you've, tend to like maybe go out possibly, or, just seeing where I think sometimes we can find abundance, a lot more abundance when we declutter and just kind of take a look at some things. What are some subscriptions maybe that you happen to have that maybe I don't need that anymore, and then I can make it, kind of allot this to somewhere else, So I think that can be a good way to kind of work with the moon squaring Venus energy. This could even be too, maybe even some tensions around, Venus was like associated again with like another one associated with like markets and like even like factories and things. So this could even be tensions around like the workspace possibly, there maybe noticing someone's being a little more critical than well, like so something along those lines. I could even see that kind of coming up with the moon squaring Venus in some sort of way. I remember reading something that Vedius Valence wrote about moon, Venus stuff, and when the moon is transmitting to Venus and how it's like where it's nice, but it can just generally be just kind of envious and jealous. and so this could be even be mindful of where we may, noticing like kind of like covetous behavior where we're like envying people, maybe where, it's like, it's one thing to be like, oh my gosh, I love this thing, but like, oh, why don't I, like getting in like maybe criticizing one's status and things like that. I think that sometimes like a moon square Venus can maybe lead into that. So, that's just some things to kind of pay attention to, it's just kind of general tensions in relationships amongst one another, as we're kind of going about our days there, and trying to bring in, and that might even be something too. There's been a lot of things that have been happening, it's been just kind of busy in just the world in general. And, I think that sometimes too it can be hard to find those moments of kind of like laughter and things, amongst kind of that chaos. And so I think that moon square Venus can be, as one can, making, even if it's not with like maybe we can't get together with like a friend or something like that, even trying to spread a little cheer around to someone, maybe just like complimenting whatever, like, oh, hey, I like your shirt, or like, oh, hey, nice day that we're having. Some guy, I was like walking the other day, some guy passed by me, it's just like Saturdays, right? And I'm just like, and then I didn't know what he was talking about, but it was just like, it was like, I got a chuckle out of me, because it was just like, just like we're just interacting, and sometimes those little small things, it made enough of an impact for me to tell a story about it. So, sometimes those moments can be, they can be nice, and they can impact people's ways in a way that we wouldn't expect. So, That's just a couple, just my thoughts with the moon squaring Venus there. Then we get to the 11th of December, and now we get to the where the moon is squaring. Oh, and I just meant and I meant to mention. Oops, let me go back a couple. Meant to mention here. I have the chart with that moon squaring Venus aspect of well. That's happened at 13 degrees and 10 minutes. Just a little FYI. Now the moon, when we get to the 11th, is going to be first is going to form, or next is going to form a square with the sun, and now we went from having that, like when we had that trine, things were feeling a little easier. Now things are feeling a bit tense. Now, it's like the inspiration went away, and it's like, what the hell? What happened? This could be just feeling a bit just out of sorts, just kind of like more so maybe on like a personal level, just kind of feeling off. Maybe, yeah, just kind of feel, just can't quite maybe put your finger on it, but yeah, just like, oh, it's just one of those changes, like, oh, the mood's changed. That's something I think about as someone who has their sun in Cancer, just like how the mood changes. And, this may be with the moon sextiling Venus, because now with that sextile, we got a new aspect in the mix. That's when the celestial bodies are 60 degrees apart. They're not as beneficial as as positive as the trine. They require a little more initiative, but it's still an easy aspect. And so this could be maybe feeling out of sorts and trying to find the relief in that. Like, okay, like this is not clearly going to flow as well as it was, or maybe as it was earlier. So let me try to, because Jupiter's like the relief from all bad things. Jupiter is, abundance. It's this sense of just birth, that giver. Jupiter's that giver of life, when we're thinking about that. And so this could be, and Jupiter's retrograde right now, something to think about. So, it may be a little bit, before we get back into that flow, and where that moon is forming that, is opposite Saturn. And I have that transit up here that completes at 25 degrees and 20 minutes of Virgo. But, moon opposite Saturn, that's hard. That's when the celestial bodies are, and as you see here, in opposite signs, if you're watching the video here. And when we're having an opposite, or when we're having that sort of aspect with like Saturn, this can be where maybe people are, it's like, I think about, sometimes where it's like, people like, well, oh, how come you always got to feel like that, maybe that thing of like needing to have a smile on, or needed to do that thing to kind of put on the show, to do the part. But people got stuff going on, and I think that's something with the moon opposite Saturn, is remembering that, that, and it's not to excuse, I think, people's behavior. I think that's something where you got to be, that's something to be mindful of. But, I think that, we all got something going on that we're wrestling. Saturn can deal with like things that we conceal from others, that we don't tell, that we're dealing with on a more personal level, the things that we would rather not kind of bring into the forefront. And so, yeah, that moon sextiling Jupiter, in order to find that relief, we may have to really do some digging for that, really try to appreciate the things that we do have, as opposed to why hasn't something come yet, or when things are going to get this, and it's not to, and it's not to diminish a situation, but it's to help put it into a different perspective, so that you're not just operating from a place of like hopelessness, because Jupiter brings hope. It's the trust that, that things will change, things can improve. By that moon opposite Saturn, maybe, we're not sure when, with that, or it could feel maybe even a lot longer than, just because we don't have a clear aims in sight yet. You know what I mean? So this is a tricky little pocket there. It's like Jupiter's trying to bring in something, but it's like there's still, it gives me the example that I just was thinking about. If you're sick, like, or the body's going through dealing with something like more kind of chronic, like where, like well wishes are good and things, it's still just stuff will just going to take its time, So like that's an interesting little pocket, and that's why I'm saying this moon in Virgo is feeling like going to be the more kind of challenging aspect of this, because then it kind of keeps going for a little bit before we move into Libra on the 12th of December. The moon's gonna square Mars, And, that's again, that can be feeling that something's been taken away. Possibly Mars is like things have been separated. There's this, Mars can deal with energy of like exile and banishment and just the separation from friends and things. And so, this this is a hard sort of thing for the moon to end on. The moon, again, it's like it started off okay with that Venus, but then it's just like that energy just, and that's why it's nice too to pay attention to those kind of sign-based aspects, to see when those shifts are happening early on, that it doesn't just, things just don't happen all at once in one moment. It builds up to things and they reach a peak and then they come down to a conclusion here. But yeah, that moon square Mars is, a tough note to end on. And as you see here, we got with Mercury having just freshly entered into Sagittarius, this would be one where I would be, or not freshly, but now it's re-entered back into Sagittarius. But yeah, this would be one where I would even kind of watch, just kind of like watch our languages there, because, there's an opportunity here because, well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. But yeah, that's pretty much the moon square Mars. And then when we get into around 8:04 a.m. Pacific time, the moon will move into Libra. And this is, we still kind of have hard aspects playing in the background, but it's like, look, when we look at the chart, Mars is at least moving, getting ready to move. It's separating from Saturn, which that's nice, that aspect that's been building up there for a while, because that's been really kind of reaching a fever pitch there for a bit. But then we get into moon coming into Libra. And it's going to first sextile Mercury. That's just entered in, like I said, just entered into Sag. And this could be where, we've had all of those, whatever these last couple of days have been, maybe whatever's coming up. And now there's an opportunity to okay, what do we deal with? Or how do we deal with this? What are some, because when you think about Libra, they're the cardinal earth sign. They're active in nature, the one of the diurnal signs, and its ruler is Venus. And so Venus wants that sense of connection, that sense of bringing things back into harmony, into some sort of where things are feeling just more balanced, and looking at the lay of the land with the moon now. Now the moon is moving out of it's in aversion to Saturn, so now it's gotten out of Saturn's view, so that's nice. Still in the view of both the benefics, so things are trying to ease up a little bit, when you got that energy, when we're kind of looking at how Libra is looking. And this is going to be something where and something I should have mentioned with Virgo too, how the mutable placements were active, but with Libra, now we're talking about Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, and Libra. Those are going to be points that would be more activated with the moon being there. But it's going to be forming these harmonious, more kind of sextiles with these planets as well, with all these planets in Sagittarius, and we only got Mars that the moon's seeing right now. So that's at least kind of trying to ease up something a little bit, but yeah, that's the moon in Libra. Hopefully, will bring a bit of lighter energy there, because then we get to the 13th. Let's move out of that. Then we get to the 13th, and the moon is going to have form a sextile with Venus, and I have that up there on the chart. It's going to happen exact at 16 degrees and 35 minutes. So between that time, if there are any sort of problems that are maybe kind of coming up there, some things that maybe you've been having troubles with. This could be where that moon coming into Libra is, reaching out to that friend, having that conversation with whomever, who you need who can help maybe alleviate whatever things are happening in your world at that point, where you can find that assistance. I find that, Venus, both Venus and Jupiter want to bring those people that can help, that can do so that. But again, with the sextile, it's one that's going to require that bit of initiative, but it's initiative that could go a long way. Maybe that person can't directly help you, but maybe they know someone who can, who can, get you on the right directions or get you to the right source that you need to. So that can be, the moon sextiling Venus there. That's kind of at least a nice little break there. It's got reception with its ruler, with the moon being in Libra. So that's nice too, kind of helping that moon out some after that little spell there in Virgo. Now, when we get to the 14th of December, before the moon moves into Scorpio, the moon's going to form a sextile with the sun. So this again, we went from trining with the we went from trining the sun and Mars, how we did at the beginning of the stuff, or beginning of the chart, to now we're kind of forming a sextile here. And it feels interesting because it's like where the flow felt a lot smoother in that first one. This one feels like it's like we're trying to do this thing, but with it squaring Jupiter, it's not quite like how it was. It seems a bit harder to hold on to, like maybe that sense of inspiration, that momentum, that was created with that trine. It felt a little bit easier then. It's not to say that it's impossible in this, but, this could be, for example, going back to, let's say, like that weight scenario with the gym. Let's say, you're wanting to start up this new sort of project, or new sort of workout thing, but let's say weights aren't cheap. Like, though I'm thinking about if you want like adjustable things and that, like that stuff can kind of add up. So it's like maybe in the meantime, while we're saving up for that thing, maybe we get a little innovative and have to use like maybe save a couple gallon water jugs, and we're just kind of lifting some things like that. Kind of we're doing some kettlebells with the milk jug. I'm with it. But maybe using like different cans and things. Maybe if we don't got a bench, maybe just like you're just working out on the floor doing something, but you're using like different things around that you have available. Even just like using stuff outside. There's even some, I see like different areas where they got different little exercise things set up. So that could even be something if that's available. But yeah, that can be how this sort of energy is kind of translating out there. But overall, I do. I like the moon in Libra. That chapter is an interesting one. I think that there's this, it's definitely kind of a mixed bag. And as you see here, Mars is getting ready to, I'm glad that we got that trine, or that last sextile before Mars gets ready to move, into Capricorn. So, I think that's a nice little note to kind of end on, but I do think that, because things are going to get a little heavier, once we get all this, and I say heavier, just like there's going to be a lot of earth energy that's going to be coming into the mix here soon. So it's like, while we have this fire, maybe this inspiration here, like this could be that sort of like that little push, to get some things. And not that we don't get stuff done in Capricorn, but it's just a different feel. So, but then the moon will move into Scorpio at about 7:51 p.m. Pacific time. And I got that chart up here. And now when we look at that, again, this is going to be where, just because Mars enters into Capricorn not too long after the moon entered into Scorpio. And so that relationship is going to be different. It'll have reception with this Lord. So that even though the moon is in its fall here, which when such a body's in its fall, it's like it makes it a little bit harder for those moon qualities to come through, or for the moon to do its thing. But it's not like it's impossible. It's not like the moon does it, completely forgets, but it's just like now it's under the rulership of a malefic. But even then, that's going to be something where I think that even this moon in Scorpios will feel different, again, because it'll have that reception with Mars, to be more kind of harmonious. It'll still be Mars things, but yeah, just it'll be different. It'll be a different type of feel. There'd be more constructive, I think, or more opportunities for constructive outcomes when the moon will be in Scorpio. But looking at just kind of the land, it moves out of view with all the planets in Sagittarius, and it's just going to be forming, later down the line, it's going to be forming these trines with Jupiter and Saturn. And let me move into the last slide here on the 15th of January, or of December. I'm just trying to get to January apparently. But on the 15th of December, it would just kind of end off here. I got the clock set on the chart just about 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, the moon gets to about 13 degrees of Scorpio as we kind of move through that day. But it's the energy that's building is that trine with Big Papa, which that's always really nice. I think that's been a nice support too for the moons in Scorpio, where the moon would normally have a harder time here. At least it's getting that support from Jupiter, and it even has this kind of harmonious aspect from Saturn too, where we may be waiting on things, but it's like it's not that it doesn't feel as heavy as Saturn normally can feel, as maybe or as restrictive as Saturn can normally feel. But yeah, that's pretty much the energies that as we kind of move through the rest of the week, is just kind of really feeling that way through Scorpio. And it's oh, you know what, if I wanted to, one more thing, and then here like I was saying here, if you're looking at the chart here, here's Mars now, just freshly entered into into Capricorn. So now the moon's gonna be having these, this different conversation with Mars. It's been talking with Mars pretty harshly, at least, especially with Mars having been doing that square with Saturn. It's been a bit tense. I think over this kind of this lunar cycle. This has been a pretty active one here, but hopefully with Mars kind of moving into a sign of its exaltation, and try to, Mars being in a more sort of elevated state, hopefully that kind of can smooth some things out a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, that's basically the energies this week. The moon just kind of wrapping up or just kind of being in Scorpio, kind of building up to that kind of positive energy with Jupiter there, and having even that support from Saturn too. So, I like that. I like that for a finisher for this week, but. Yeah, if you like that, or let me know how your week's been. I will say for me, as the moon kind of went through like we had a little bit of Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. Moon and Taurus, those are usually pretty good times for me. Like, even though it's like squaring a lot of the fixed placements that I have, I find that the moon in Taurus is definitely a lot more constructive, I find, than with the squares than I do a moon. And when the moon's in Scorpio, that one can be usually a little bit harder sometimes. But even I've noticed, even the Scorpio ones haven't been as tricky as they normally have been. That historically for myself, how they've been. Moon in Gemini has been, because when I'm recording this, I think the moon's still in Cancer right now. Moon in Gemini wasn't too bad. Definitely got out a little bit more. That was kind of fun. I have a lunar return during that period of time, so that was an overall pretty good one. Overall pretty solid. That's going to be more kind of harmonious aspects. Cancer was definitely a bit more emotional, and honestly in kind of a nice way. I've kind of felt like I needed to get some things moving. So that was even kind of nice. I think this moon in Cancer's been. It's been solid, I would say, for as much as the moon in Cancer can be. I think because I got my it's going through my moon, will be going through my 12th house, and yeah, looking at 12th house things, and then that's fine. But yeah, and then when the moon we'll see. I usually am pretty solid when the moon's in Leo too. That was it's a bit of a mixed bag, but because I got Mars and Mars is there, and then Saturn opposes that. So, but I'd say overall that week's been pretty solid. Some things that could be better, of course, but I think on a baseline. We're moving along. Got some people I need to catch up with. So that was, and I had been catching up with some other with one thing and one friend in particular. So that was kind of nice. But that's been my week. I've noticed there's been a lot of, like I said, a lot of changes going on, especially kind of an environment. Like city-wise, things have been busy. I have noticed that the energies have been kind of active here. There's a little bit again, a little bit of positives and negatives to that, as well, when I'm kind of thinking about the cities, and just even just what's going on in general. So hopefully you all are staying grounded in all this stuff, and taking care of the things as you can, and while we all kind of just navigate this journey together. So know that I'm figuring it out one day at a time too, but. Yeah, hopefully, sending out good vibes, and that things have been, that you're just enjoying your week, and that hopefully this has been constructive. And let me know how this, how these energies show up for you as you kind of navigate this stuff. I love, just like I love talking with the people too. Yeah, we're gonna have to leave some of these things in because mine's been busy too. I will say as of late. So that's something I'm in a bit of I got some harsh Mars things that are going on in my chart right now that I'm not too crazy about. So that's luckily, but I'm looking forward to Mars getting out of that and not squaring my moon or opposing my moon anymore. So that'll be lovely because I've been at a lot of accidents. Yeah, I've been like I tripped the other day. Silly. Silly, I should mention that one too. Yeah, I've had a bit of a tumble the other day, but the body's healing well. So that was a kind of a nice thing there. So, but yeah, that's enough about the just little personal notes. But yeah, let me know how things have been going for you. How have you been navigating the week? How these transits have showed up for you, you know. And yeah, I think that's. Oh, and you know what? If you want to, it's like, well, I'm trying to wrap this up. It's like, don't make it awkward. So, if you want to, down in the description box, there are some playlists one's for the Celestial News Monthly. So if you want to see what's going on with the sun and the other traditional planets, that's available. And then also I have the series of videos that I've been doing talking about different celestial bodies and different zodiac signs in different houses and how my thoughts about that and some ways to approach that as you're, navigating your own chart. So that's something so if that's something you're interested in, all of that's available for you as well. And I'm still just kind of building on this. And things have been a little bit, parts of behind the scenes have been a little busy here. It's a little hectic. So, but yeah, that's all I got for you there. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that moon. I actually got to see the moon last night a little bit. It's been cloudy. I've been trying to catch Mercury, but that's been annoying. So I'm hoping I can catch it before Mercury goes under the beams of the sun. Because I'm like, come on. And I'll catch you on the next one. Later.